Hello, this is Cloris Kiley, and welcome to this class titled How to Land Podcast Guest Appearances to Grow Your List and Multiply Your Book Sales. I'm so excited about this because this is one of the strategies I have used to grow my business. I know how powerful it is, and I know how powerful it will be for you too. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I have some slides I prepared just for you. And yes, this is the class, How to Land Podcast Guest Appearances to Grow Your List and Multiply Your Book Sales. So let me tell you about me. I'm Cloris Kiley. I'm a coach and consultant specializing in influencer marketing. And I work with other coaches and consultants, with entrepreneurs who have a business centered on their expertise, practitioners, speakers, authors. I help them build a solid foundation in the marketing side so they know how to share their message and also how to build that solid network of influencer connections such as podcasters so they can share their message with many more people, make a bigger impact, build authority, grow their list, and see that revenue coming in, right? So the promise for today's class is that by the end, you will learn the key factors to select what podcasts to be on, which one's right, which one's not. Also, the most powerful way to attract the attention of high-profile podcasters, the secret of a successful podcast pitch. What do you have to say, really? And how to leverage your podcast appearances to build authority, grow your list, and multiply your book sales. So if you're here, it's because you're curious about this, you want to know more, but really, why be a guest on podcasts? What is the impact that can have in your business? And I'm telling you, this is something that I didn't know when I first started my online business. I used to have an offline business, and I'll stop sharing so I can tell you the story a little better. I used to have an offline business coaching students in high school and graduate school and in college to help them go to the next level in their academic life. So we helped them go to college or grad school, and it was going great. I had a series of people working for me. It was a good business. But then I wrote this personal development book, and I really wanted to share it with as many people as possible. I said, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to focus on this, grow the book, really help people become empowered and reveal their magnificence. So I created the book, and I thought it would just fly off the shelves. As soon as it was published, people would find it. And soon I realized that I was wrong. And you as an author or as a future published author, you will see that you actually have to market your book. I didn't know anything at the time, so I started to blog. I had a radio show, an online radio show, where I would read books and then analyze the books. I thought it was super inspiring, but I wasn't making any progress. I was working 14-hour days and really doing my best. And still nothing, the revenue wasn't there, the impact wasn't there. Only a few people were reading my content, consuming, listening to my show. And it was really frustrating and overwhelming. But it was only when I realized, hey, why don't I share my message with audiences that are already there? And why don't I partner with people who have those audiences so I can make a quicker progress? That's when everything changed. And that's why the focus of my business now is influencer marketing, because thanks to those connections is that I built that positive momentum to grow my business. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen again. And I always say that I went from mess to success. My revenue, my impact dramatically increased after I applied this strategy. The overwhelm that I was feeling, that I would wake up in the morning and say, why am I doing this? Why did I publish this book? All of that went away just because I had that support. I had that momentum to keep me going and to show me that it was possible. So that I had a future in my business. So now I've been on many shows, many of them really high-profile shows. It has allowed me to grow my list, to grow my business, to have more clients, I'm publishing a book and to sell that book, to bring people to my new podcast, Beyond Influencer Marketing. The change has been dramatic, okay? And This is just more examples of the platforms I've been on. And it's not just podcasts, though. I've been on featured on blogs with guest posts and virtual summits and live events. So all of that together has really made a huge difference. But let's focus on the podcast piece for now, though, because it's one of the, I guess, the easiest ways to get started with this strategy. As I said, this strategy has helped me grow my coaching business, my podcast beyond influencer marketing, where I've had many influencers as guests, and my book sales. So as you can see, podcast guest appearances really are a form of referral because the host is introducing you to their audience as an expert. Hey, here comes Clores. She knows about influencer marketing. Listen to her. So that audience trusts the host. So you build authority right away. Also with podcast guest appearances, you build momentum to grow your list, to boost your revenue, to boost your book sales. And also you become empowered. Let me go back here so I can show you, because this is important though. With podcast guest appearances, when you see that you're actually making progress, when you're connecting with these hosts who already have a thriving business, and you see that it's possible for them, it was possible for them to achieve what they achieved, then you start to see yourself, to see yourself achieving the same. And it's only when you see yourself achieving something that you can really do it, right? If you don't visualize yourself achieving a goal, it's impossible. So this empowerment piece is super important. Now, how do we do this? Well, I put it all together into a process that I call the soul process. It's just one process, simple, and yet there are some nuances that you have to keep in mind so you're successful. And the first step in that process is to select the right podcasts, because it's not just saying yes to everybody and being on every single show you can be on, because you have to be on the right shows. So how do you know that? How do you know whether a show is right for you or not? Well, you have to do two basic checks at a minimum. The first check is your foundation check, to know whether the avatar of that show matches your ideal reader. Okay, so are your readers listening to that show? That's a big question. And you only know that if you know your avatar really well. If you have taken the time to go to them and survey them and say, what shows do you like? You know, what is it that you like to do? Where are you at so I can find you? And also the second thing is values and style, because you might connect with a podcaster who has the ideal audience or seems to have the ideal audience, but then their values are not a match to yours. So of course their audience will not respond to you because they're used to the host, right? So you don't want that. You want to have somebody who has the same values, the same style. And the only way to do that is, or to know that, is by doing your research. So you should never pitch your topics to a podcast that you don't know well. You should never do that, or just outsource that to somebody and just show up to the interview without knowing this first, because this is your precious time. You want to make sure that whatever you do creates tangible results. The second check is a marketing check. And there are some questions that you have to answer. Is a podcast host actively promoting the show? And I'll show you a couple of things you can use to figure that out. Is there a dedicated web page for the podcast or show notes page? You gotta go to a person's website and see, is there a web page for this show? If there's no web page, chances are this host doesn't really care that much about promoting the show. Okay, that's one way to know. Does the podcast appear in iTunes search results when you enter your ideal avatar's keyword? If it doesn't show, then it's probably not right. And I'll show you an example in a second, because you really want to go to podcasts where your ideal readers are. And then how many iTunes reviews does the show have? But it's not just how many reviews, but how frequent those reviews are being posted. If the person got the 20 reviews 2 years ago and that was it, that's not a good sign. It just shows that the host is not probably dedicated to growing their show too much. So I'm going to stop sharing. And what I'm going to do next, I actually have iTunes open so I can show you an example of a simple search that you can do. So let me start sharing my screen again. And here we are on iTunes. And I already typed the word entrepreneur in the search box. Why? Because that's my interest. I want to see shows that are targeted to entrepreneurs. So I have all these results. And what I do is check, well, first of all, is the show that I'm considering there? So I click select all and or all. And here's all the shows that qualify or that show up under entrepreneur. So I look for it. If it's not there, that's not a good sign. And then I select one of them that seems to be a good match. So I just select one. I actually have been on this show, Join Up Dots. Okay, so we'll see. So first of all, I look at the reviews, and this person relaunched his show. When I was on it, he was actually promoting it pretty heavily, but it looks like he's not promoting it anymore because, first of all, it says archive and there are only 8 reviews. So I think that's the reason. I look at the reviews. The last one was, it looks like in 2017. So that is a bad sign. I would not want to be on this show now, okay? So that's how you go about this. And you basically look for trends. And then it says website here. So you would click on it and see if the show has a website associated with it. If it doesn't have it, and if the website is not really strongly promoting the show, I would not go with it. Okay, I'm not going to click on it because then the sharing feature will not work. So I'm going to stop sharing. And what you can also do when you click on that website, you go to that person's website and then see exactly what they say in their About Me page. That will show you a little bit about their values and style, and it will give you a good idea of whether this is a show to research more or not. So definitely go to iTunes, do your research there. If that passes the test, go to the website and learn a little bit more about the host. And then third, go to their social media pages and see what kind of engagement they have. Especially if they have a business page, check out whether they post new episodes of their show. If they don't even do that, it's not a good match, right? You want somebody who's really passionate about their show, who's going to be a good match for you to connect with your ideal readers. Okay, so I hope that helped. I'm going to start sharing my screen again and go back to the presentation. Okay. All right, so the questions that I have for you then are, number one, what can you do today to learn more about your ideal audience, your readers, right? So what is it? Maybe you have a list of subscribers with readers, go ahead and send out a survey to them, right? If you haven't done that in the past 6 months, I strongly suggest it. Or maybe you can go to a Facebook group with your readers, hang out and ask questions, connect with people and have a conversation about what matters to them, what podcasts they listen to, and then you'll get more ideas, right? So just do one thing though. If you just do one thing today, that makes a huge difference. You take one step, the next step follows. What resources will you need to learn about the podcasters? And when I talk about resources, I refer to time mostly, because you don't want to spend 3 hours of your day researching podcasts, right? You want to spend your time doing something that requires your brilliance and your strategic thinking. So I would say if you're going to do a lot of research for podcasts, outsource it. I go to upwork.com. That's where I find most of my freelancers. They do a fantastic job. I have a virtual assistant who does all the research for podcasts. And then I have the final yes. I take a look at what she gives to me and say, okay, this is a yes and no. And then I know what to focus on. Okay. So make sure you make good use of your time. Now, the next step in this whole process is outreach. Outreach is basically pitching, right? Just reaching out to those podcasters, creating a relationship. Now, I'm going to stress the importance of going to reaching out to these people with a mindset of giving. There's a book I love. It's called The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, and he was a guest on my show, Beyond Influencer Marketing. Just go to the show and you'll see Bob Burg. And he has a philosophy in that book that is a story basically about how giving is the key to success. Given with the purpose of giving, not given because you're expecting to get something in return eventually, but given with the purpose of giving. With that mindset is that you have to approach all these podcasters. So the outreach process includes a learning piece, gaining attention of those podcasters, and of course the pitch process itself. When you're learning, that means that you're going to go and listen to the show. It's not just about researching and checking the reviews and going to the website, but actually listening to the show and seeing if it's a good fit. Put yourself in the shoes of your ideal reader and ask yourself, would they listen to the show? And if the answer is maybe, then don't connect with that person. It has to be a resounding yes, right? Also, become active. If you listen to the show and it's wonderful, then you got to be an active listener. How do you do that? By sharing the show with your platform, maybe social media, and tagging the host. By maybe sharing it with your contacts if you don't have a large social media platform, with your list. But really being there and showing that you care about the show. If they have show notes, go and post a comment in the show notes. Most hosts don't get any comments on their show notes. So if they see a comment, they get like all excited and you'll stand out right away. And then rate and review. That's what it is. R&R is rate and review the show on iTunes. All of us podcasters love a review. So if you create a review and you mention that on your pitch, then of course you already have an edge. You stand out, okay? To gain attention of those podcasters, promote the host of that podcast on your own platform if you can. So for example, if you have a blog, why not write an article about the podcast that you like or the host and what they have done that resonates with your readers, and then tag that show host. Or just ask the host, hey, I have a blog, I would love to ask you a few questions. You start creating that relationship, okay? If you have your own podcast, fantastic. That's what I've done. I feature influencers on my show, and I start to create that relationship. Because what you're doing is what? You're delivering value to the podcaster. That's the mindset you have to really gain the attention of somebody. Other examples of platforms are YouTube channels. If you have a really large Facebook platform, have them on Facebook Live or do a Facebook Live inspired by their show. Always tag them and let them know. Find a way to go the extra mile to support the show. Just like I said before, even a comment in the show notes makes a big difference. Leverage what you have already done to connect with the host. That means that if you have posted that review or you have done the Facebook Live about them, you definitely have to mention that when you pitch, just a couple of words about it. Again, you want to be top of mind for that podcaster. Now, in the pitch process, though, the pitch process has to be about showing the host that you care about their message. So I'll stop sharing for a moment. I've had so many influencers on my show, Beyond Influencer Marketing, and also my other show, Magnificent Time. And now in the most recent show, I ask all these influencers, how do you decide to connect with people? When people send you a pitch, how do you decide to read it or to say yes? And there's one thing in common they all have, and that is that they only pay attention to customized pitches, customized to them, to their message, to their values. So if you're going to go out and select a bunch of podcasts and send a generic pitch, you will not get a yes, most likely. I mean, you might get 1 out of 100, but that's not what you want. You want to really create a relationship. There's one of my guests, his name is Dov Gordon. He's an internationally known speaker and author. He has a show as well. And he said, Cloris, I have no time to read all of my emails. I get hundreds of emails from fans. So my assistant takes care of them. But I did tell her one thing. If somebody writes with a story of how my message has impacted them, I want to see that email. And she forwards all those emails to him. He personally replies. If it's a request to connect or to be on the show, he takes it seriously because that person has taken the time to write a customized message. So that's my number one advice for you for the pitch. I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Okay. And that's what I said, tailor your pitch to the host story and the mission of the show. That's what I've done. When I pitched to Misfit Entrepreneur with Dave Lucas, I was trying to find something that resonated with me. So I went to his website, to his About Me page, which I recommend you do. And he had a story about how he had a daughter named Hannah, who was 2 years old. And he looked at Hannah and thought, how can I leave a legacy for my daughter? What can I do? And then a podcast came to his mind. And that's how his show was born. I thought the story was so touching. So I went and wrote about it on my pitch. Of course, I was accepted because he knew that I was actually, really liking the show. I really resonated with his story and his message. Offer 3 unique ideas for a show topic. And this is important because hosts are thirsty for new stuff. Even if they have a flow that they always follow with their guests, you give them a different topic that they can cover that they haven't covered before, then they will, of course, be interested. And send samples of previous interviews if you've been on other shows, or even video interview. If you have your own show, just send a sample, because that's one point of friction, I guess, when they're going to say yes to you, is that, are you really good at speaking? You're a great writer, you're an author, but do you know how to speak in front of an audience, how to communicate? And that's important that you show proof of that. And create a one sheet. A one sheet is basically a summary of your bio, what you have done, your book, topics that you can explore. And, in most recent times, since most of the pitches happen via form, like a contact form or an email with specific guidelines, the one sheet is not something that you must have, but I totally recommend it, because the information on the one sheet will help you complete the pitch much faster. If you don't have a one sheet, then you'll have to look for the information, and it'll take you too long. Again, you want to use your time wisely. So I wanted to show you a pitch template that I included as the bonus package for my book. It's one of the pieces, but I have it here just because I wanted to show you. So I'm going to, I'm going to share my screen again. I think I have it open. Okay. So in this little handout, I have 2 kinds of pitches, but I want to focus on this one, which is when you have some sort of connection with the host. If you have that, if one of your connections has been a guest on that show, or if the host has been a guest on somebody else's show and you know that person, just find one connection. You definitely want to mention that. So you start, okay, thank you for what you do. And here's when you have an opportunity to say what resonates with you about the show. Very specific though. Avoid a great show, I love your show. That's definitely a turn off. So then you have to be specific. Again, very specific. Notice how I say here, just posted a 5-star review on iTunes. Mention what you have done for them. And then here we have a common connection in common. That's when you have the opportunity to do that. If you don't have a connection in common, that's fine. But it's important, it really gives you an edge. Then you talk about you. What do you do, who you serve, your mission. And that mission, though, has to be perfectly aligned with the audience of the podcast. So that person sees like, oh, wow, Chloris is a great fit for my show. Then you talk about the topics. And again, something different. I would say short, though. Remember, this doesn't have to be a 5-page email. It's really short and to the point. I offer, what is it that you offer for their audience, though? Because remember, this host, his number one or her number one goal is to deliver value to his or her audience. That's what it is. Here I give examples to my appearances, especially if you have a high profile appearance, definitely put it in there. And then what value and how committed you are to delivering value to their audience. That's so important. And then, of course, again, you're restating that all you want to do is deliver as much value as possible. You say thank you and then your name. So I would say the shorter, the better, but put emphasis on what you have in common with the host, what you love the most about the show with very, a lot of specificity. And then examples of your work to reduce that, that friction. It's like, oh, does this person really know know how to speak in front of an audience on a show. All right, so I have some questions for you. Let me start sharing my screen again. So is this helping? Hope so. Hope so. Okay, so what can I do today to support the podcasters? That's my first question for you. What could you do? What kind of value could you offer to our podcasters? Think about your platform. Do you have a blog? Do you have another podcast? Do you have a large Facebook group? What is it that you could do to support a podcaster today? So just think about it, write it down, and have that in the back of your mind as you start implementing these strategies. And what could you do today to get ready to pitch? Just think about it. Maybe you could refine your bio that you're giving to people. Maybe you could create that one sheet, right? What is it that you can do to get ready to send that pitch? Create those topics. And then put that as part of your to-do list. Again, it's just one step leads to the next. Now, the next step in the process, the L, stands for leverage. And leverage means that you must make this appearance something that creates tangible value for you and your book and your business. If not, if you just go unprepared, you'll be like those entrepreneurs who go on Shark Tank and their website cannot handle the number of visitors they get after the show. So the website crashes, they don't sell any products. So you don't want to be unprepared. You want to be prepared before you go on the show. So how do you do that? Well, first you got to mention your book. Mention your book in your bio. Mary, the author of X and Y. You definitely have to mention that. Mention that during the show, and talk about it with the podcaster before the show. I said, hey, you say, I have this book coming out, or I have my book. I would love to talk about it. I think it's great for your audience. So really, mention the book and never say my book. Say the name of the book. So always say the name of the book. The more you repeat it, the more people will remember it after the show. And then also is important, it's critical that you have a list building system to capture people's email addresses for listening to the show. Otherwise, they'll say nice, maybe a couple of them will check out your book, but that's it. So you definitely want to stay in touch with the listeners. And the system is simple, and yet you have to really, put the time and effort it takes to make it work well. So it has a lead magnet. It's a gift that people access for free on a landing page. And then the email sequence for those new subscribers, you cannot forget that. Many people have a lead magnet and a landing page, and then they don't remember that they have to have some sort of communications, a stream of communications to tell their new subscriber what to do next. Because like, oh, here, thank you for downloading my 2 chapters. Here you go. That's it. And then you disappear. They will forget about you. So you have to start creating that relationship. And make sure, though, that your lead magnet is directly related to the topics you explore on the show. If you don't have such lead magnet, it's time to create it today, because otherwise, again, you will not get tangible results out of your presentations or your interviews. This is one of my podcast appearances on the Conscious Millionaire Marketing Podcast. And it was a big one for me because it's a show that has very selected guests, very high-profile guests that target my ideal audience. So, of course, I wanted to talk about how to build connections with influencers. And guess what my giveaway was? It was my lead, was it 15 ways to get noticed by influencers, which is perfect. I talk about it, then I say, okay, here's my download. People go to this page, they download my influencer guide. So it's all perfectly aligned. So people who listen to the show become my subscribers. So I can communicate with them. I can send them to my book, to my show, whatever it is that I want them to do next. And all paths, every time I've had an interview on a show or summit, all paths lead to the same place. And that same place is my influencer marketing guide. A couple of times I did not have a perfect match, like the influencer guide was not perfect. So I just created a new lead magnet just for that presentation. Then I found a way to incorporate it into my other programs. So you might have to do this, okay? it's important again that your message is clearly aligned with your lead magnet. I'll give you another example. If you are, let's say, you're writing about health and how to achieve optimal health, right? And then you go on a podcast and you talk about how refined carbs are not really that good for the body, and how you gotta have more fiber. So you talk about diet basically on the podcast. And then at the end you say, I have my lead magnet. Here's my guide for strength training and how to build muscle mass. Nobody's going to be interested, right? So you gotta have a perfect match. What tools can you use to do this stuff? To build your landing pages, you have tools such as ClickFunnels, which I love, and this the tool of choice. Lead Pages, which is a lot, less expensive. Thrive Leaves and Thrive Pages, which you can use with your WordPress site, and many more. So I would say, take the time to research these tools, see which one works for you. And if you need help with the technology, you can always hire someone on Upwork. So don't let the technology ever stop you, though. Like, that should not be really a deterrent for you to achieve what you want. And then I love Canva for images. Like the landing page that I showed you before, I created that image with Canva. Basically, I took all the pages of my PDF and put them kind of like laid out in a fan type of arrangement, just so people would see what they're going to get. I did that with Canva, very easy. So definitely check it out. And then to manage your subscribers, just pick one of the CRM tools out there. MailChimp, which is what I have. Aweber, Infusionsoft, Constant Contact. One of those. But definitely have that ready before you are on a show. Now, my question for you is, what can you do today to improve your list building system? Just think about it. Maybe you need to create a new lead magnet. Maybe your page is not really converting that well. You have to make some changes there. Maybe you don't have those emails ready. So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. Excuse me, and what you can do to improve that. And then finally, the last step in the process is the E, and that stands for expand. And expand means that this does not have to be an isolated thing that you do. You add on a couple podcasts, you think you're done, right? You put them on your website and you forget about it. This strategy has to be part of what you do, part of how you market your book, how you market your business. So it's important that every time you are on a show, you ask for an intro. You ask the host, hey, do you know any other shows, any other podcast hosts I should connect with? The podcast community is very tight. I know so many podcasters, so I'll be happy to refer you to somebody or introduce you to somebody. So make sure you ask. And create a system so this becomes part of, as I said, what you do. Just a couple hours a week you can dedicate to that. Hire an assistant to research podcasts for you. And remember that the promotion of your book and your business doesn't end when you launch the book or you launch a product. It's forever, basically. You have to keep promoting it. You have to keep sharing your message. So my question for you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to make podcast appearances part of your marketing strategy? So what number came to mind? If the number is less than 7, it might mean that either you have not seen the value of podcast appearances, and the best way to figure that out if it's true or not is to be on a podcast, on the right show, and see what happens and track your results. And if it works, and you'll see like, yeah, this really works. And another reason might be that you feel like you're not ready. And that's a really common way to feel. So I'll tell you one thing, I think you're ready. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together and feeling confident enough, because that's definitely something that can kill your motivation and prevent you from taking action. And what can you do today to get started? It's just one thing. If you feel that you're not ready, what can you do to get ready? What can you do to feel that you're just going for that next step? Because as I said, the number one motivation killer is to believe that you don't have enough readers or enough revenue or enough subscribers enough Facebook followers, enough media coverage, and then you kind of put it in the back of your mind, or I'll do it next year or next month or tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. I tell you, you are ready. I went to all of these people, all of the podcasts that I've been on. I went straight to them with a mindset that I could do it. If you don't have that belief, it'll be really tough for you to get a yes. When I pitched to EO Fire, one of the largest podcasts for entrepreneurs, I went with that mindset. I said, I'm going to be a guest on the show. And this is why. I love the show. I knew that for John Lee Dumas, the host, something that was super important was the fact that we needed to clearly know our avatar. And that's something that I didn't know at the beginning when I published that book, the self-improvement book. I didn't know. I just wanted to help everyone. I wanted to empower people, everyone. And that actually cost me too. So I told him that story on my pitch. I said, this is why I feel like I could deliver value to your audience when I share this story. And he said yes. And so people spend years pitching to EO Fire and they never get a yes. Because number one, they don't do their research and their homework. And number two, they believe, I'll pitch, but I'm probably not going to succeed. So you really have to go there with that mindset that you have value to offer. And it's your job to figure out exactly how to express that value. And the fact that you are soon to be author or an author is already huge value. You have proven that you can do something that most people will never do in their lifetimes. So it's definitely, your edge that you have, a book that you have written. So now I made you some promises at the beginning of the presentation. So now let's see if you know the answers. The key factors to select what podcasts to be on. What are those key factors? So some answers might have come to your mind, but remember the foundation is super important. Your avatar, right? The values and style of the podcaster. And then the marketing check, right? You're going to see how much that host promotes the show. I said the most powerful way to attract the attention of high-profile podcasters. What do you think that is? It's to show exactly how their show, their message has changed your life with a story. Nothing like a story. Where you were before, where you were after, how that's similar to your own story. Anything that is specific will help you win. The secret of a successful podcast pitch is related to that. It's to really have a customized message and to overcome that rejection that the podcast host might have by showing proof of your work, by providing topic ideas that show him or her that you know their audience. And how to leverage your podcast appearances to grow your list and multiply your downloads. And the leverage piece, right? You gotta have that list building system. And you have to mention your book. But you must have that list building system because without it, you won't get any subscribers. You will not be able to stay in touch with those people who have listened to you, who trust you now. So it's important that you get all this stuff ready and start doing your research today and see yourself as somebody who's capable and ready to deliver amazing, inspirational messages on a show. Regardless of your topic, you're always inspiring people, right? That's what you do. And that's what people want to listen to you. So I hope this was helpful. If you want to connect with me, I'm at ClorisKylie.com. That's ClorisKylie.com. I have many resources for you there. I have my podcast, Beyond Influencer Marketing, and my book, Beyond Influencer Marketing too. So I hope to stay in touch with you. Let me know how things go. And as I always say, every second of your life, reveal your magnificence. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.